my name is Seth Eliot Santoro, and I'm an intuitive business coach to LGBTQ plus game changers, and I'm so excited to share with Pearl today.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here. Won't you leave the clouds you're under? Ain't it funny how there ain't no rain or clean? Why'd it take so long to leave you in the rearview mirror? Now nobody gonna steal my sunshine or turn my blue sky gray. All I know is at the end of the day, wildflowers grow when there ain't no shade.
Hey everybody, this is Pearl, and I'm so excited to have you back for another Conversations with Pearl. And today I have a really special guest who's been an inspiration in my life over the last 6 weeks that I've gotten to know him from my special friend, Julie DeLuca Collins. And we're going to talk about a book that I've been using over these past few weeks to help me through the loss of our son, Matthew. But today I'm excited to bring you Seth Eliot Santoro, who is an intuitive leadership expert, healer, reframer, and smileologist. You got to smile when you say that, right? He's a spiritual consultant, intuitive bestseller coach, psychic medium, animal communicator, HR advisor, speaker, bereavement facilitator, and death expert. Seth is also a 3-time #1 international bestseller author of Smile from the Inside, From Grief to Grace, and Finn and the Ferocious Flu. With many more self-help and children's books on the way, Seth's vision is to inspire 1 billion humans to heal, therefore, from smiling from the inside. As an intuitive business coach and healer to the LGBTQIA game changers, which I love watching him do this every day, Seth combines his passion for corporate America, coaching acumen, and metaphysical gifts of intuition and mediumship. Ultimately, he partners with clients to identify the root of our challenges, heal ourselves from inner strifes to find happiness again, and reframe and re-engage our past, present, and future, enhancing our intuitive abilities and mentor us to build a better legacy, future, and fulfilling life for ourselves and everyone around them. Seth, welcome to the show.
Hi, Pearl. I'm so excited to be here.
So happy to have you. So you're coming from California, right?
That's right. Los Angeles, baby.
All right.
Hollywood, actually.
Yay. So I used to live in Venice Beach many, many moons ago.
No way.
Yeah, I love
that.
it. We'll have to talk about that later, but I got fun stories. But so I've been following you on TikTok. I met you through Julie in August. You know, everybody knows I lost my son, and I called Julie. I'm like, I need to get away. This house is like too heavy. I don't feel like I can get focused again. And I go up to Julie's and she introduces me to you. She's like, hop in here real fast and meet my friend. And so I have been just so, like, you really made me smile a lot through some of these challenges. And your book, Smile from the Inside Out, is like so much fun. I actually shared it at my business meeting last week. I did a little education moment with it. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I
Cool.
did. I love the mock acceptance. I sold my story, but I turned it into a business as well. So it was really, really cool.
Wow.
But so tell us about yourself. Tell us about a little bit about yourself. And I love for you to share your stories of the kidnapping.
Oh, you're going right in there.
We're going right in.
We're right there. Let's see about myself. Well, I mean, every time I hear like a bio, I feel humbled, and I'm so honored to be here. And it's just so humbling to yes, everything I do is what you said. I just, it's still really tough to understand that that's what I'm doing, creating a life where 1 billion people are healing, right? In some way, emotional healing and smiling from the inside, So I'm a psychic and medium. I'm married to a man. I live in Hollywood. I am, I coach clients. I actually also help people become bestsellers for the books that they want to write within. And I am a fun guy, and I love to laugh, and I love to smile, and I can be very emotional as well. And I've overcome a lot in my young little life. I can't really say that anymore being in my 40s, but um, I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot of what to do and what not to do. And I've learned that bereavement and chaos and grieving is messy and not linear and does not make sense. And for me, when it all started, right, like 10 years, no, like 12 years ago, I had a boyfriend at the time who seroconverted to HIV positive. And so we were not HIV, we were both HIV negative, and then he converted to HIV positive. And it was the days that followed that I knew that we, and he more specifically, was going to go through hell. And I had been noticing that I went through sort of similar stages every time something major or traumatic happened in my life or someone died in my life. So I decided, okay, I'm going to literally like document kind of like every day how I'm feeling, what's going through my mind, all that stuff. And about 6 to 12 months later, I had like the first version of Smile from the Inside, which now doesn't exist anymore. But the first version was just important for me to document and get everything down. So I created this kind of updated model to Dr. Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of loss or dying into what I call the 5 stages of healing. I think I answered your question. And then you want to go right into the
well, hold on. Let's
okay.
talk. I want to talk about documenting because, you know, I know that's something I've been doing a lot with the loss of Matthew, and you know, I've always journaled. The journal's been a big thing, but lately I've been finding myself like really trying to document my feelings so that I understand when they show up later. Because like I've mentioned to you before when you were guesting on our Shiro League, is that I realized I've had that grief fog, right? And like when I could go back and I could start reading what I documented, I was like, oh, I was doing this, I was doing that. You know, I was just getting up and existing. I was just going to that meeting. I wasn't participating. I was just sort of like in that fog. So I love that you talk about documenting and journaling. And I think I think you would agree too, that it helps us get those feelings that like for me too, a lot of the negative talk that I have in the front of my brain, get it out so I can get to the file cabinets in the back of my brain that really out, right? So tell us, like when you're doing the documenting, are you like how do you what's the best environment for you to do the documenting? Because I know like for me, for journaling, it needs to be quiet, it needs to be in the morning. I'm either sitting out front of my porch swing or on my back of my lanai. So for you, what's the optimal place for you? Can you envision that, right?
I love it. I love it. Well, at the time I was working at an interesting job in Mexico. So I would have a lot of alone time in the car, where I wasn't driving. There was someone else driving. And so I documented a lot there, but I like to be alone. I can do it anywhere, to be honest. The bathroom is also a really like awesome place. Like that's where I have some amazing thoughts. And I do like to be alone. So I like to put on some music. Sometimes I put on the same music that I know is gonna evoke and it will allow me to emote. So, but I do find myself like I do like early in the morning. Or I just like snuggling up on a couch or a love seat by myself and just kind of writing, or nowadays it's talking into a phone, right? And it transcribes for me. I think where you feel safe, that's what I want to say.
Yeah, I agree that's safe. And I love that you said that too, because I actually have a notebook in my purse too that I carry with me.
Oh, no
and
way.
if I don't have it with me, then I'll use my phone and start recording, or I'll, you know, everybody says I text like I type, but I type really fast. So I'll do it on my phone really quick, you know, if I have a thought or something that comes up. So I love that. So yeah, so I want to hear, like, you went through some traumatic stuff in your life, and you know, you shared in the Shiro League some of that trauma, and like, you know, you shared about the situation in Mexico where you were kidnapped, and you know, that was something pivotal in your life. And it, you know, I would love you to share that and how it changed your outlook and how it created the path that you're on today.
Yeah, sure. I'll condense the story so it's concise. This was about a year and a half or so after my boyfriend, then now ex-boyfriend. Um, I was working at this job in Mexico, and we had armored vehicles all over the place, and we were constantly pulled over by military or police. This was again in Mexico, and this one time it just didn't seem right. And we were surrounded by cars. I was held at gunpoint for at least nearly an hour. I do speak Spanish fluently, so that helped and hindered, I think. And I would get upset, and then the guns would get closer to my head. And I could tell I could tell that it was not just the regular police, like they claimed they were the police. I could tell that it was pretty. It was what they call now narcos, but it was a drug cartel. Especially when they asked me about it openly, like, "Are you in this particular drug cartel?" So I, during the interaction, it was 45 minutes. I don't know what saved me, whether it was Hillary Clinton, because the company I worked for at the time, the owners were best friends with the Clintons. I don't know if it was the fact that I spoke Spanish. I don't know if it was the fact that I threatened them with the local lieutenant because I had his number in my phone. I don't know how I got out of that situation, but after the hour-long experience with guns to my head, I basically decided that I didn't want to die in that moment. So I was like, take the car if you want to take the car, but we need to make a decision here. So finally, after staring me down many times, the head guy there, the jefe, he finally decided he said, okay, you can go. Now, within a minute, everyone was gone. Every car was gone. So another indication that it wasn't just a regular police pulling over. Plus they trashed the car and all that stuff. So we were on our way to one of our ranches. It was lemon growing. And so when we got to the ranch, I spoke to my boss, who totally denied that it was the cartels. My security guard spoke to his boss. They were like, yes, it's definitely the cartels. And then I called my boyfriend when I got to where we were going, and I cried. That's when I don't even know how I didn't cry this entire time. But that's when it hit me like, oh my God, this just happened to me. And mind you, I had been pulled over many, many, many times before, but this one was different. So I cried. I was convulsing, shaking. It was bad. And it took about 20, 30 minutes to put myself back together. And then I had to finish the day. And luckily the next day I was leaving Mexico, and I kind of swore to myself I would never go back there, which lasted about 5 years. But anyway, it was basically, that happened. And for, the month or so afterwards, I felt fine. I kept thinking about it, and it was crazy. And I was like, wow, did that actually happen? It felt like it was a dream as opposed to real. But I knew that there was something going on. I knew that there was something going on with my body too, because I didn't feel quite right. Some days I would wake up amazingly happy, and then the next I would be just in the depths of despair. And I couldn't figure out why that was happening, even though I had written the book at that time, right? And I knew the kind of the stages that I believe happened to us. So it was about 6 weeks later, my nephew was born, and I got a call from my boss that my best friend / other security guard was kidnapped, and the car was also kidnapped. So the car was taken, and the car was actually taken, and my security guard was taken in another vehicle. And so that was, to me, that was the worst thing I could have heard, and it brought back everything. And that's when I believe that I really started to feel the emotions that I had been avoiding, or my body had been protecting me against, for the previous 6 weeks. Like if you think about the SMILE method, right? And we think about S is for shock. Obviously, I was in shock for quite a while. And then mock acceptance. The mock acceptance is the stage that I explained between the 4 to 6 weeks, where some days I feel great, everything's fine. And then the following day, I couldn't even get out of bed. And then this was the I, this was the in overwhelmed him. So when I found out he was kidnapped, luckily later that night, they found him on the side of the road. I mean, he had been beaten to a pulp and had somehow gotten to a hospital. That was when, that's when I got chills. That's when I couldn't sleep. And it was several weeks of me just emoting, and I was angry and I was depressed and I was embarrassed. Like I didn't want to tell anyone what had happened to me. So during all of that in overwhelmed time, my boss called me at the time and said to me, "Hey, you had a tough time in Mexico, and now that this guy has been kidnapped, what do you think about going back to Mexico?" And I was like, "I don't think I'm going to go back to Mexico, probably ever again." And he said, "Okay, well, I've thought about you in other roles, but I don't, like, your job is in Mexico. It's not in California, the United States." So he said, I'll look for you within the company." And I was like, "You know what? It's okay. Like, I think I want to go out on my own. I want to do my own HR thing." And I was the director of operations and HR for this company. And I told him it wasn't worth my life. And this was my first 6-figure job too. So I was so excited about it. I got to travel all the time, and, it was great. And I got to work from home and like from Mexico. And it was just amazing. It was the most amazing and stressful job. But it was that in that conversation that I realized it's not worth my life. $100,000 is not worth my life. Plus, he said to me, "I didn't think you would last more than 6 months." Now, what I have not explained to your audience is that this was the most brutal time in Mexico where I was. And there were 4 different cartels vying and literally warring for the best route from Mexico City or CDMX to Reynosa, which is on the border of Texas. So they would threaten us through Twitter, and they would say, like, "This is the curfew. We're going to wreak havoc after that." So there were bombings, there were beheadings, there were literally 5 heads found 2 kilometers away, about a mile and a half from where I slept every night. So my boss says to me, "When we found the 5 heads, or when they found the 5 heads, I thought you were going to leave after that." And I was like, "No, that didn't bother me." Obviously, this whole thing was huge PTSD. So I say that to say, after speaking with him, it took me about 6 months or a year to even kind of go to the next stage, which was learning, right? So the L is for learning. And what I learned was it's not worth my life, and that there's so many other things I can do, and that I don't have to put myself in dangerous situations. I also learned that these types of traumatic events can cause major PTSD and can cause so many emotions. And one moment you're feeling fine, and the next you can't even breathe. And I think that was so important for me to learn. Not that I had to go through that to learn it, but I did go through it and I learned it. And also, this is the second time I was held at gunpoint, by the way, by cartels. The first time was in Colombia in 1998, but that's a whole another story for another time. But so through all this learning, just to finish with the SMILE method, E is for embrace. So it's now 12 years later, and I have gone to Mexico since. In fact, I was just in Mexico last week. There's always a little tinge in me that thinks, okay, they have my passport. They have a copy of my passport. They have, these cartels have all of my information. So they could just look me up, or they could just be dinged every time I come into the country. So that still is a valid fear. Well, I don't know if it's really too valid anymore, but that's my fear that I have. And so as part of the embrace, I believe embracing is enthusiastically accepting what has happened to us. And so I use that story now as a tool, to provide kind of, if I can go through that and survive and live to talk about it, then I feel like anyone going through anything can talk about whatever they're going through, And as part of the learning too, I learned to share. And I didn't really talk about this. And I still don't tell everyone this story. it's a big story. And every time I tell the whole thing, like it still has, I'm attached to it. I still have feelings to it. I know it was an event. I know it was an experience in my life. And I don't see it as positive or negative, but now I see it as this incredible event that I can now use to help other people. And I think that's also part of embracing, is to help pay it forward, make the world a better place through my sharing, through my story, through my fear, through my emotions. And yeah, so there's the smile kind of
Yeah.
method.
And I mean, first of all, if I was your mom, I'd be like, you're not going back ever. You were staying here.
Yeah. I didn't tell her for 2 years, by the way.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Protect her.
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
want to do that.
I can't imagine being your mom, like hearing that story. And I was sitting here thinking, you're talking about the smile part of everything, I mean, yeah, like that half hour later you break down, right? It's like it's like that shock. I was watching a show. Chuck and I have been we got hooked on Netflix on the Designated Survivor show with Kiefer Sutherland.
Okay.
Like, it was on normal TV, but now it's on Netflix. So yesterday was an episode where these two FBI agents, they get in the car after this big bombing, and he's sitting there going, I can't hear anything. And at some point I looked at my husband, I go, do you feel like that? Like right now, like we just don't want to hear anything. Like we just, through everything that's happening right in our world, but that shock and that awe. And then, like you said, sharing the PTSD, it's to watch you explain that. And I haven't gotten all the way through the book. So I'm still rereading Mock Acceptance. I'm still rereading that. But I feel like for Chuck, when I heard you explain some of that too, is I feel like Chuck, and even in some situations and some of the people that I've met and coached, he has been through so much grief that it's like he has, what did you call it? The I is
overwhelmed him.
Yeah. I think he's in overwhelmed him. Like I think he skipped the M and he's in overwhelmed him. Like he's in the I right now. And it's interesting though, how you explain that. And so I was wondering when you were saying that, do you see people kind of bounce around with a smile?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, also think about it. Me telling you the story, or what I told to Shirley a couple weeks ago, like it triggers me again, and some emotions come up. Granted, now I have 12 years, and as I always tell people, like time is always on your side, right? So, but even now, when I tell the story, I have some emotions, and then I once again learn this is why I'm telling the story now. I'm sharing the story to inspire and motivate others to share their traumatic stories, and then moving once again towards embrace. Like, yes, like I'm doing this to pay it forward. I'm doing this because like I know that happened to me, and I'm blessed that I lived through it, and I'm honored now that I get to share it with others in the hopes that they can inspire others to do the same as they're healing.
Well, that's good to know, because I was like, am I going to bounce around? I feel like I would bounce around in the book, and I even like I watch family members and people that I coach, like my mom. I've watched her bounce around through trauma she's had in her life, and I always try to coach her, going, okay, Mom, let's talk about. I don't want to talk about it. I'm like, okay, But I feel like what you said too, like to get to the E. In some ways, I feel like I'm kind of empowering. I feel like that's why I was asked about jumping around. I feel like I get to the E sometimes, and I empower, and then, talk to, like just before we got on here, I was on TikTok and I watched this. There's this young mom, her 2 kids, she has 2 little kids, and it sounds like her husband is going to be in jail for the rest of his life for first degree murder. And people are attacking her, going, well, you should have picked a better father. But I'm like going, why are you attacking her? It's a situation. Wow. She's going through trauma. So I just kind of put a message to her, on there. And I just thought, like sharing our story is so powerful. And I feel like right now I'm talking on a seminar on January 7th. And I feel like my title is sort of transitioning through trauma. How do you walk through it? Because there's a life before the trauma, and there's a life after the trauma, right? So, Absolutely. So how do you, when you coach somebody, you're working with somebody, how do you help them like walk through that method when they're jumping around?
Yeah, sure. So as a coach, I feel like we first need to go where the priority and urgency is on for whatever we're dealing with. And as an intuitive coach, I can feel where we need to go. And how I coach someone essentially is through every experience of their life, because grief and trauma permeate through everything, especially when you're in the throes of it. Not when you've had 12 years like myself to process, right? But when you're in 6 months or 4 months, like you're in it. So everything, every little incident that happens in our lives, it has this thread of the trauma through it or grief through it. So we might be talking about how someone cut you off today and how it triggered you somehow, blah, blah. But like, that's an important conversation, because then we learn what to do next time or what not to do next time, or that you need a minute sometimes, to just yell into a pillow or get your anger out, So I always have like ideas for, and I have their homework and we can talk about winnings and losses and that sort of stuff. But I always have the framework in mind of where, like, are you Smile today? Where are you today? And let's talk about it. So we use whatever they're going through to identify what they're feeling today. And all we have is the present moment, right? So, and the feelings that we're having now. So let's deal with that. And then I listen to them and I feel into what I also am feeling from the universe or spirit or what have you, to either advise them, guide them, mentor them, or just let them cry or just let them be. It's important. Like, silence is sometimes important, people need to speak or be heard or feel appreciated, acknowledged, validated. So it's, and we laugh, we cry, we do everything in between, right? We smile, we frown, we get upset, we get angry, aggravated. But it's in a safe space. And when I say safe space, I mean, people usually feel safe with me. If they're working with me, I would hope so. But also there's like this level of protection that I feel like I put around everyone that's in conversation with me, or all of my clients, of love, of, call it whatever you want, call it beautiful white light, call it golden light, whatever. I feel like their guides are with me, their angels, their family, everyone is with us, all for the goodness and the healing of this person. And I also, people don't know this, but even as we're doing sessions together, I'm sending people healing. Sometimes it's more obvious than others. Sometimes I actually take a minute and I'm like, I'm just going to send you some healing right now. But most of the time I just let them talk, and as they talk, I send them healing. And something about that is a beautiful concoction of like a safe space.
So I would love to know, like, when did you start feeling like you had that gift, like, to do that? And I love too that you said, because I've had clients come to me and they're like, well, my coach that I used to work with, because I'll ask what they work with, why weren't you working with them? Well, they said they did everything like that they taught me, and I found out their life wasn't like what they were teaching me. I'm like, okay, first of all, nobody's life is perfect. I don't care if you are the most successful multi-million-dollar coach, life is not perfect. So if they are telling you that they're living everything, then you do need to fire them. And you have to understand that if I'm going to coach you, my life's not perfect. Like, things are, I'm coming to teach you my skills, my lessons. I'm paying some of it forward, but life's not perfect. Right. And so, like, I would love to know, like, when did that, Seth, for you start seeing and feeling that you had that gift?
I think it was about a year and a half after this event in Mexico. I was dating another person, but it was the same type of individual who did not reciprocate or show me love the way that I needed it or wanted it. And I knew I deserved so much better. So I literally got up, I rolled over and I said, I deserve so much better than you. I do. I'm sorry. I know it sounds harsh, but I deserve better. And the second time I said that, like, the next day, the world opened up. And it was almost as if the universe and the spirit world was like, okay, you're ready now. Whether I was or not probably didn't matter, but it just, I would be sitting with people and I would feel all sorts of, it all started with mediumship, which is tough because you're going from just sitting there and then all of a sudden being aware of someone. If someone's mother comes and they might mention that their mother passed, and then the mother starts showing you all sorts of images, signs, symbols, video clips. So it was very overwhelming for the first 9 months. And mind you, when I saw The Sixth Sense, I was like, I want that to be my life. And I was in love with Long Island Medium, and I was in love with John Edwards. And so I thought it was the coolest thing that they could speak to, deceased individuals or humans or animals. But when it happened to me, it was very different. And I didn't know any mediums. So I reached out to a couple different mediums that were like in my periphery. And I said, I'm having all these weird feelings and thoughts, and I don't, like, can we have coffee? I just want to discuss that with someone. So it took me about 9 months to kind of come out again for the second time in my life, and this time was actually harder for people than the first time. Like, being gay is one thing, but like when you tell someone you speak to deceased loved ones or spirit or animals, it's a whole nother ball game, which I thought was fascinating. Anyway, back to your question. So every year or two, the gift, it expands. So it all started with mediumship, and then I started practicing and studying. And in studying, I learned that all mediums are psychics, but not all psychics are mediums. So mediums can speak with deceased loved ones, humans or animals, and psychics can, I like to talk about psychics in the word intuitive, like you help people with the not so distant past, the present, and the not so distant future. That's what I think I do as a psychic. Then I got into Reiki and energy healing, and that all started happening. And then all of a sudden I was at a restaurant on like Valentine's Day evening, and I started to feel like the unborn baby of the woman next to me. So I gave her a reading. I knew her name. I knew the baby's name. Was crazy. So then I started doing prenatal readings. I still do them, but that's really fascinating and fun. And then all of a sudden I realized I can read animals too. So that was, I thought they just had to be deceased, but then I read for a cheetah in South Africa and they were alive. So yeah, so never a dull moment. And I can't wait to see what the next gift is going to be.
That's so wild. And like you said that it was the second time coming out, like it was, I just can't imagine that would be like, I'd be like, oh, that's so cool. Tell me about it.
No, it wasn't that way. Wow, it wasn't that way because I have a lot of Catholic and Christian friends.
Yes.
Or people that are afraid of death.
Right. Yeah.
And I used to be one too.
Right.
Like I never liked talking about death, but now I'm obsessed with it.
And it's funny because like I always talked about like, so when my mother-in-law passed, we were with her. She was supposed to come home, and it's so weird because like I feel like sometimes I get these like premonitions, right? So I went to go see her on Monday. She was supposed to come home Wednesday, and so I went to go see her on Monday. And I was leaving, and Wednesday we had tickets to the Harlem Globetrotters. My son was home for spring break, so we were going to go. And so I'm like, hey, Mom, I'm going to swing by with the boys. We'll see you. And then Chuck's going to pick you up afterwards. She's like, okay. So I'm getting ready to walk out the door. And she literally goes, her roommate, she did this so matter of fact, her roommate looked. She's like, Pearl. I'm like, what, Mom? What's the matter? She goes, don't speed. And I'm like, I'm not going to speed. It's okay. I'm going to drive home safe. No worries. So Wednesday comes, I'm at the office. They call me and they say, she's not feeling so great. So why don't you wait till later to come pick her up? She said, we just want to, I'm like, okay, no problem. So I go to the house. I change into some comfortable clothes. I'm going to hang out for a few hours. And then all of a sudden they call and they go, you need to get here right away. She's taking a turn for the worse. We don't know what's wrong. Literally we're like, oh, what the heck's just happened? Right. So we put Chuck and my older son, who's home from college, they go in one car. And I'm like, I got to go pick up Nate from high school because I need to get him there so we can all get there. Right. So I'm driving and I get to the stoplight. I'm like, son of a gun. She told me not to speed. This little stinker knew, because we knew she didn't want to. She was going to have to come home for a feeding tube for a little bit, but she was going to come off it. Right. Yeah. I was like, oh, Mom, I'm going to shoot you. So then I pick up my younger son. We get to the hospital, and they've never had loss in their life, right? So I literally
Mm.
pull them out. I mean, this was such a shock that her nurses were crying, her caseworkers were crying. They're like, we don't know what happened. And I knew
Wow.
what it was. She didn't want to come home like that, right? So I'm in the hallway with the boys. I asked the caseworker, can you come out and stand with me to talk with my boys? And I tell them, I said, listen, this is up to you. You can come in here. This will be the most beautiful thing as well as the most sad thing you will ever witness. But if you can't handle it, it's okay to stand out here, but I need to be with Dad and Mimi. And they're like, no, we want to come in. So we went in, and my sister-in-law lives in Buffalo. And so she'd gone to massage that day because everybody thought Mom was coming home, right? So we put our guard down, and she didn't have her phone with her. So my brother-in-law is trying to go find her. So he sends his dad to go. So long story short, they get on the phone with us in the hospital. And I'm like, I'm like, John's talking. I'm like, John, you got to be quiet. Let Amy talk. She's struggling. She needs to hear Amy's voice. So as soon as my sister-in-law talks, she's talking to her. I'm like, Amy, you have to tell her it's okay. You need to tell Mom it's okay to go. And as soon as she did that, like, she took her last breath. It was the most beautiful thing.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
I will never forget it. I loved my mother-in-law to death. She was like another mom to me. But I
Mm.
remember like that, watching that whole process. I'm like, you son of a gun, you knew. You just knew, and I always tell her, when I get to heaven, I'm going to have a conversation with you. And my father-in-law, on top of that, because my father-in-law was passing, he would act like he couldn't respond to anything when the nurses would come in the room. But when they would leave, he would mouth to me because he knew I used to be able to read lips really well. And I was like, I'm going to shoot you. And he, again, but I was so amazed, like that we know, and that intuition, and that, and I was like, that's what she meant. Right. I think for me, I think it's powerful. I was also the sixth sense going, this is so cool. I just love that, and I'm Catholic too, but I know what they say, and I'm like, I have my belief. I have my faith, but I have my overall belief as well. And my priest maybe listen to this and give me you need to come to confession, but that's okay. But, and so when Matt passed, Seth, I knew, like, I was sitting on the couch. And I tell my friends, they go, you will know when your child, something serious is wrong. Because I remember sitting on the couch, he had butt dialed us and said he was sorry. And no, that he was on his way home. He swore he didn't have my car. And so I was sitting on the couch like 20 minutes later, just shaking like a leaf. And my husband's like, you got to stop this. You're going to have a heart attack. We can't fix it. We don't know where he's at. I'm like, something's wrong. Just something's wrong. And then, of course, long story, the next day he was passed. But I just think it's a cool thing that you have. I think it's, amazing gift that you have, because I feel like for me, I believe God, everybody gives a gift for a reason, and they have to pay it forward. And I love that you're paying that forward. So I guess my next question is, when it gets loud and like there's a lot, like, what does Seth do to turn some of it off and do self-care for himself?
I'm actually very lucky that I can turn it off pretty easily. My husband, on the other hand, he has a harder time turning it all off. I when I'm about to do a reading, interesting, I let them come to me the day before or the day of, right? It's always like when I'm getting ready or in my meditations, their deceased loved ones or animals will come to me. And I allow that because I think like that's cool. Like they're like, hey, let's get prepared, and they're with me the whole day usually. But then when we leave and we end the session, like they know they're out of my life, unless they have something really important that they need to say. They might come back. I have made it very clear to whomever, the spirit world, that unless it's of the utmost importance that they hear X and Y and Z, please do not come through or break through my everyday. I probably will shift that moving forward as I spend more and more time kind of in my genius space, like because I want to feel more. However, because otherwise you get what I call drive-by readings, and some, like, I've had in situations where I have gone up to people because my heart starts palpitating, and like I start feeling lots of things, and then I have to go up to them, and I would say 9 times out of 10 it's been amazing and people are very grateful. But that one time out of 10, it's not good and it's not great. And it's not because of what I'm saying, it's because of they either deny what I'm saying or they don't believe in mediumship or what have you. So that's why I made a very clear line, like, you will not break through my everyday unless it's really important. So, but I am easing up on that. Because if someone needs a message, then they need a message, and I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with going up to a complete stranger and being like, I don't know if you believe in mediumship, but I have someone here and they want to say this. Like, I've learned my lesson. I have cried a couple times when people are like, I don't know what you're talking about, or like reject me completely. But so I love kind of going on walks. That's a really good way for me to kind of calm down, if you will. Also, I can tell you that I get really, really hungry after readings. So I try and do readings before dinner or like before some type of meal because I get super hungry. Yeah, I don't understand why. Probably I can probably tell you the energy it takes for me, because I feel like we have to raise our vibration or our vibrational energy, and then whomever is on the other side has to like kind of descend a little bit in their energy. So I often sweat. It's pretty common, but I sweat during readings. It's not normal sweat like at working out of the gym. It's just a different type of like nervous sweat. And so I eat to calm down too.
So you burn some calories. You got to get some.
I burn some calories, right?
That's wild.
That'd be
and
amazing.
I love. Okay, so for the listeners listening, listen. He's even got boundaries over people coming to want to send a message. I just love that you even have boundaries over that. That's so cool, because we have to set boundaries in our lives, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
It's just so important. And I just love that. So I want to ask you a question. Who was your biggest influence in your life growing up?
I mean, my mother and father for sure. Um, I can't think of anyone else who had such an impact in my life. You know, my mother taught me to listen. My mother's also an empath, and she taught me to listen and to be supportive and encouraging and kind and compassionate, you know, whereas my father taught me the value of a dollar, how to maintain relationships, how to build relationships, how to maintain the material items that we have. Like, he taught me how to take care of my car so that when people get into my car after 2 years, they're like, is this new? It smells new. You know, like that's like, and that translates to so many different parts of my life. He also, you know, my business ethic definitely comes from him. My moral ethics, my business moral ethics all come from him. Yeah, they're the two probably biggest influences in my life.
That's awesome. I love that, because not many people will say that their parents were their that biggest influence. And your dad probably
I'm very lucky.
your dad probably should have gave me some lessons on keeping my car clean. My dad used to be like, young lady. I'm like, Dad, I don't want to hear it. That was my friend or whatever. And even I still carry it over a little bit. My husband ever saw to go, I'm driving the red car today. Do I need to be prepared? So we have fun together. So Seth, tell me about your family. So you're married. Tell me about your husband and your life there.
So we are married 4 years, just 4 years. And he's South African, and we met through mediumship friends. So I had friends that were mediums. He had the same friends that were mediums. I went to a mediumship workshop, and they had already met my husband. Machiel is his name, and they came up to me right after, and they're like, oh my God, you need to meet our friend. He's South African. He's gay. He's amazing. You're going to love him. I stalked him for a couple days, and then we connected. And then we had this beautiful like FaceTime relationship. And then we met, and the moment I met him, I was like, oh, I know I'm going to marry you. I knew it. And I had never felt like that. I even told my mother I was going to marry him. So it didn't just happen just like that, but it took a couple months for us to kind of figure out I had ended something, he was in something, ending something. So it took us a couple months, and then, but in the same year, like several months later, it was like we reconnected in terms of like, he's like, okay, I'm ready. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. And then within 3 months we were married. and yeah, like he's also a medium. So that's, I don't even know how to explain that. All I can say is that it's every day's an adventure with him, and I can't tell whether sometimes there's a bug in the house or a spirit in the house, because he makes the same noise when he sees a bug versus a spirit. So
Oh, that's
um
crazy.
yeah, so it's fun, it's exciting, and yeah, yeah.
So
I have a
that,
sister. Oh,
uh-huh.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a sister and I have a niece and nephew, and I do want children, and they're the closest thing I have to children. And I love them so much, so dearly.
That's so
And
cool.
yeah,
So your story is a little bit like Chuck and I. So I met Chuck, and so you're in California. You'll know Knott's Berry Farm. I met him at a
yeah.
company picnic.
Okay.
My girlfriend and I we're roommates. So my roommate and I and his roommate and him were at the company picnic. We ran into them at a ride. They were with these two girls, and so we just thought they were, partnered together. So that was back in the day of break dancing. I used to be able to do a little break dancing, not anymore. Yes.
Wow.
So
There
that's
you
back in the
go.
day. And Chuck was the running man dancer, right? So he was the running man dancer. And I felt
Amazing.
so sorry for him. And so we, all of a sudden, those girls are gone. The four of us are together. We're hanging out, just chatting, talking. We're in the parking lot now because the park is closed. It's just my car and Chuck's car in the parking lot. All of a sudden, they're about to come tow Chuck's car away. I'm like, I got to go. They're going to tow my car away. See you later. Nice meeting you. And we just left to go to my car. And my roommate literally says, "You're going to marry him." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I don't know his phone number. I don't know where he lives." She goes, "Oh, he has all of that. You're going to get married." So that was August. By October that year, we were moved in together. And by December, we were engaged.
Wow.
So it's just crazy.
Wow.
Your story just reminds me of my story. So it's wild.
Oh,
So fun.
yeah. Like when you know, you know.
Right.
I didn't really believe in that anymore. I thought it was no offense, but I thought it was a heterosexual construct of like when you know. But it doesn't matter what sex you are, who your preference is. Like when you want to
You
be with someone,
know.
you want to be with someone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so powerful. I just love that. So what's coming up next for you, Seth? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, I'm finishing up my second children's book. Um, the first one it's called Finn and the Ferocious Flu. It was about a family going through a fictitious pandemic, and how they navigate through that. The second book is going to be called Scout and the Serious Split, I believe, and it'll be coming out April or May of next year, and it is about two women getting a divorce and how their children navigate through that, with coaching and therapy, and like their just how to. All my books are based on the Smile method and the Smile. I call it the Smile Adventure series for kids, because I tell it in the way of like you go through the first process through the Smile method. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to start on my third book pretty soon for children. Then they also are all going to have some type of LGBTQ plus kind of aspect to it. Not that it has to be so blatant. And I have two more books in my mind. One is about intuitive leadership, and the other one is about how to support others going through traumatic times. I don't think there's enough books out there of how we help others. So I'm also looking into like doing more paid speaking gigs, maybe even a TEDx talk, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of incredible things happening. I mean, don't get me wrong, my life isn't unicorns and rainbows at all, right? Like
Right.
last year we lost my husband lost his mother, and that was traumatic for everyone. There's just ups and downs every day, even. But I'm really looking forward to 2023 as like a year of incredible accomplishments.
That's so awesome. It sounds so, I can't wait to watch you and do all these amazing things. It's so cool. And I love that you're reaching out to the kids too, because I think it's so important that we help our young ones so
Absolutely.
young. It's so powerful. Okay. So before I do our cards, tell me where they
Okay.
can find you at.
Oh, sure. I have SethElliott.com, 1L1T for Elliot. So I am SethElliott.com, or my hashtags and symbols are Seth Eliot Santoro. So at Seth Eliot Santoro for in Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I'm trying to grow my TikTok, as Pearl knows. And yeah, I think that's, and then you can find me Seth E. Santoro. Just be careful if you Google Seth Santoro, you might get a gay porn star.
Oh,
just
no.
letting you know. Yeah, just
Oh
letting
my
you know.
gosh. Well,
So
that's
Google Seth Eliot Santoro or Seth E. Santoro.
awesome. That's so cool. And we're going to share all the links when we post everything too. So, all right. So we're going to do our cards right now. Seth knows he's going to tell me when to stop. So I'm going to shuffle them now, Seth. So tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay. Ooh, you made me way down the deck. Ooh, what would it be like if it was easy?
Ooh. I kind of need the Jeopardy music right now. What would it be like if it were easy? Yeah, no. I think the purpose of life is to live, and the purpose of life is to enjoy. And I think if it were easy, we wouldn't be able to enjoy as much. We wouldn't be able to live as much. We wouldn't be able to appreciate the happiness, the contentment, the good times, the joy, the playful times as much. So I think it would be a shame.
That's
if everything were easy.
powerful. That is powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. So, well, it's been fun having you on. I can't believe the hour's gone by so fast.
I know.
So
Oh my
it's
God.
been amazing.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So listen, everybody, if you are looking to find more about your self-care and want to find out how you score, I want to encourage you to go to pearlssurvey.com. That's Pearls Survey. So 2 S's in there, .com, and see how you score. And then let's chat. So before we leave, I want to remind everybody that you come into this world as this little oyster that's a little rough on the outside, but when you open up on the inside, you have your inner pearl. And I hope you go find your inner pearl of greatness. Have a great day.